Thank you so much for joining us tonight for the Renew 102 Community Workshop. It's really great to see so many people here, so thank you. If you would like a copy of the slide deck, you can use that code right here, but we'll be showing it up there as well. Hi, my name is Kathleen Valenta, and we moved into this district in 1993. Okay, I think that'll work. Okay. With 3 kids, and when we moved here, we attended a school board meeting, which is why we moved here. Because at the board meeting, they were talking about what will kids need to know and what will our facilities need to look like, because the kids in the kindergarten today will not have the same jobs that are available. Now that's 30 years ago, and the district was right on track there. I'm a retired teacher, so I know some of you and some of you know me, and so I'm excited to be working with this group. Okay, and I'm nervous because I just talk to children. They smile and they're happy. Okay, so as you may know, our district, like many other districts, are facing challenges, and these challenges offer us some opportunities as we try to plan for the future. And that's why we're all here today. The purpose of Renew 102 is to come together to study these challenges and opportunities and search out together, we are talking about together, to develop a plan and make recommendations that we feel are the best for our schools, our community, and our kids. Your opinions are needed now more than ever. We're counting on your suggestions and recommendations. I think sometimes it's easy for us to think that things have already been decided. They haven't been decided. That's why we're here. We're going to come together as a community. We're going to talk about what needs to happen, what our priorities are, and being very specific with this process, which might be a little bit of a pain, but stay with it. And then we'll take a look to make sure we have some future-ready facilities. Okay. Let's see what I missed. A whole page. No. Take this. Yeah. We have a lot of people that have been working already since September. Some staff, administration, and we have 3 co-chairs, Val, Depa, and Steve Hartley. He couldn't be here this evening, and myself. They pulled us out of a hat, like the same reason why you're probably sitting here, right? Somebody called you and said, show up, and that's what happened to us too. So the facilitating team has been meeting in order to figure out what recommendations they want to go to the board. Taking a look at what the needs are, looking at expansion, what do we need to do with our, let's make sure I'm not saying Dale's part. Okay, I think she was going to take over there. So we're going to take a look, and Dale's going to take over and have a little more conversation about what we're going to do tonight.
Hi, everybody. Quickly, we just want to thank everybody who's been on the facilitating team and the facilities team since September. Can you stand up if you're in the room or part of that? Maybe you can give them a hand for all the hard work. Let's take a few minutes to review how we're going to work together tonight and October 29th. These workshops are open to our entire community, and we've tried to invite everyone. So make sure to spread the word. Look around. If you see somebody who should be here, somebody who you know would be a great contributor, make sure to ask them to come to the next meeting and share their ideas. Tonight, following an informational presentation, we're going to work into small groups to start the process of developing our recommendations for moving forward, for moving our district facilities forward. Okay, so a little more about the workshops. On the screen is the agenda that will be followed in each workshop. You should also have tonight's agenda on your table. You should have a packet right in front of you. Each session will start with an informational presentation. So we're going to give you some info, and then we're going to follow it up with a small group work activity, and then each small group will give a short report summarizing their input on the presentation. It's important to note that these sessions are not structured as an open forum or a debate. They are work sessions focused on results and reaching collective decisions as a group. What you have on your sheet is what will be shared, so make sure that what you put on the paper, make sure that you put your pen to the paper during the work sessions. And actually it's a little different. We're going to be using Chromebooks. So basically everything that you guys want to get to us and to get to the powers that be need to be put in inputs to the Chromebook. So if you have ideas, make sure they're good. We know your time is very valuable, so we're planning to have each session last 2 hours and end promptly at 9 p.m. Okay, the calendar. It's going to be an active few months of gathering community feedback through this process. Tonight we're going to learn more about our schools, our buildings, and the challenges and opportunities facing our school facilities. Next time, we're going to learn more about funding school facility updates and some options for taking our schools to the next level. Then we ask the community for their feedback during building tours at our schools and a community-wide online survey. That's going to be a very important part of the process as well. And then on December 19th, we're going to present our recommendations to the Board of Education. So a little bit about how the big overview is going to go. Okay, session documentation. Following each session, a series of documents will be developed to record your work and the information learned. And we are going to document everything. So the presentation will be posted on our website along with work group responses. We'll also produce an executive summary with consensus points, and those consensus points will be the building blocks of the final thing. Okay. Now, kind of most importantly, I have a question, I have a comment. During each session, we have a lot to cover in a super short period of time, so we know your time is valuable. We really want to get you out of here at 9 to honor that time commitment. It's going to be important not to interrupt the presenter. So if you guys have a question, please, on your table, you should see there's this little I have a question piece of paper. So if you're joining us virtually, there's also a link to an online I have a question form. If you have a question or comment, please write it on one of those forms and turn it into us at the end of the meeting. And then we will get answers to you as soon as possible. You can also call or email your question, and the appropriate person will respond to you in a timely manner. We just request that you respect this plan, because otherwise we're never going to get out of it. So. Okay, now it's my pleasure to introduce Superintendent Dr. Chris Covino to provide us with some additional information about our schools and where we are today. Thanks.
I was cautioning people not to applaud until you know what I'm about to say. Thank you all for being here. It's wonderful to see all of you. I just want to add that the QR code that's on there will take you to a digital version of this. And when Val referenced a virtual way to see this, you could, I don't know if you can see, but there are a few cameras around the room. So we're recording this and we'll post it on our the site, the renewd102.com.org, which takes you to our school website, and there'll be postings there of all these pieces. So my job here tonight is to just provide a general overview of the state of our facilities in the school district. For those that have not met me yet or don't know my background, I have been here, this is my second year as the superintendent of the district, and in our first year, my first year, we took on a relatively, what I would consider ambitious bite out of structuring the next 5 years. Some of you in this very room, and I thank you again, were part of our Vision 2030 strategic planning. It was last April that we all got together, about 150 of us, 125 of us in the North Gym next door where volleyball is currently happening. And we're hoping to capture the volleyball players as they walk out, so you can just wave them over to your table if you know who they are. We left that series at 2 nights with 6 areas of focus for the district for the next 5 years. They are community engagement, investment in staff, finances, instructional programming and academic growth, equity, access, opportunity, and belonging. And finally, the reason we're here tonight is we had a group focused on future-ready facilities. And part of what they wanted as an offshoot of their conversation is for us to begin the discussion of how we make all of our buildings and all of our classrooms accessible and safe, built to last and energy efficient, comfortable and flexible, technology integrated and future focused, and community and collaboration oriented. Those were the hallmarks of the discussion that led to the beginning of these conversations here tonight, so sort of the beginning of the story. Once we started looking a little bit closer into what our challenges, and then not just thinking about challenges, but opportunities are for our school buildings, a few things rose to the top of the conversation. We have an aging infrastructure in almost every building in our district. We are looking for, because we need space for growth of flexible, innovative, and inclusive programming, and we need upgrades related to safety and security in almost all of our buildings. Though when we talk about those things, it's not just about fixing old buildings. It's also about fixing them in such a way that we create more opportunities for our students. We, as part of the discussion about future-ready facilities, wanted to add more elective options, wanted to include music and language and STEM and career pathways that are linked to the high school coursework. We wanted to think about expanding hands-on science so that a student who goes to the Science Center, which is a wonderful place to visit, but they only go 3 or 4 times a year, right? Why can't we do that all the time was one of the questions that got asked. Why can't that be in every school building? We have a wonderful program called Connections that's for students with IEPs, and that Connections program has been growing and growing. It's actually doubled in size in the last 3 years. We also have a desire to reduce the outplacement of our students. We want more students to attend their community schools, rather than when they have specific needs that we can't address, we send them to another school building. And then finally, we also discussed the expansion of pre-K programming. We currently have 8 half-day sections of preschool that are currently offered at Barnesdale. So when we talk about these things, and I just want to draw your attention just to a few pieces, we just want to graphically show you just where we kind of are. These 4 pictures are just examples of some places where we have aging infrastructure that we are in the process of fixing, but there are quite a few things. We have 3 buildings that are 100 or more years old. Ogden, Cossett, right, and part of Congress Park. Right? You might think that this building is also, but Nazareth we're not sure which part of this building may have been the original part of Nazareth High School when it was sold to the district in 1974. Right, so this building is also showing some of its age. What you see on that screen is a complete HVAC replacement that we did at Barnesdale. The second picture you see is just where, like an example of where we need tuck pointing in a significant way, where cracks in walls are appearing. The third picture is actually just from this weekend. It's from directly upstairs, where we found water seeping through walls because we had a copper pipe that was well over 60 years old that had been pitted and water was coming through. So that was a replacement over this last weekend. And then the third is just an example of just in general where we have concrete issues, but also issues related to some of our foundations where we've identified a few places that are fractured that need to be repaired. Okay, these are just some examples. I'll get into a few more details a little bit later in this presentation. But that also made us think about, it's not just the facilities, it's not just the rooms, right? It's also about the spaces that students occupy, and sometimes teachers occupy as well, and students' accessibility to get to those spaces. What you see up here, if you look at the upper left, and then you look at the next picture next to it, all those tables are in a hallway at Forest Road, and they're there because the second picture over, they're brought out every single day for lunch. We actually have 3 buildings where we have to set up lunch every day in the gym, limiting gym space, because we don't have enough space right now for the students to be eating in a cafeteria. The one on the far right is a picture of Cossett during lunch. For those of you who've been in Cossett during lunchtime, you'll see that we have at least 1 full grade level that eats in the hallway right outside the cafeteria. What you see on the bottom of the chair rail, that's also Cossett. There is no elevator in that building. It has 8 half flights, right? So if you can imagine an elevator that stops every half flight and gets up on either side, right? If we had one of those, it would be a little bit more accessible, but right now we have chair rails across all of the stairways. The bottom left-hand corner is the one picture of the Forest Road playground. If you could see further into the distance, you'd see the Barnesdale playground. Both of them are about a foot off the ground. That's how they were constructed. They make them nearly inaccessible to any student who's fully mobile. Right? So these are just some of the space and accessibility issues that we identified as we were thinking about facilities in our district. Other space issues. The top left-hand corner, this is where this is the cafeteria at Forest Road. This is where band and orchestra takes place. The second is a bathroom at Cosset. It also serves as a changing room for students. It's just one example of probably our oldest facilities. Just below that one, this has become a bit of maybe a tongue-in-cheek joke. That sign right there is the caution sign, so you don't hit your head as you go into the faculty bathroom, which is really a little bit more like the Harry Potter closet. So you have that. The bottom left-hand corner is an example of the classroom that several years ago, with a very, very ambitious and well-researched effort, started to move towards flexible furniture. But because there wasn't a comprehensive plan, we have a lot of classrooms that have bar top tables and people sitting on the ground, things that just really aren't very flexible in nature, and were really sort of designed at the time, 5 or 6 years ago, without, like I said, a plan for the future. Then we have other classrooms like you see on the right side of the screen, where we have very traditional desks, ones that just store books inside and chairs, and they sit in rows, because that's really the only thing that you can do with desks sometimes in the spaces that we have. And then lastly on that list is safety and security. What you see on the left side is what we have in many buildings that is just either defunct or yet to be upgraded technology, emergency push buttons, call and response. The one on the bottom left is actually in my office. It's the clock doesn't work, that's why I put a piece of white tape over it, or paper. But that is an example of others. You can see, even in this room, that they're fully analog. We actually just met with a consulting group yesterday that puts in a digital signage that is not only a clock, but it's also a messaging board too, so that you can send messages into the classrooms, you can give security alerts, you can tell people where to go if there is an emergency. Then on the right side, we have issues with entrances and doors. Most of our doors are the same age as our buildings. You'll see that they are not ADA accessible. They wouldn't be allowed to be built at this point in time. And many of them are, let's just say, not exactly fire rated. Right, so those are some of the doors on the right side, and then the picture in the middle is Park's entrance, which you all walked in today, which has a very secure lobby, right? But that lobby lets you into the school building before anyone can actually check you in, right? So again, if we were to build new, this is not how we build it. And that's not necessarily the message here that we need to build all new. But these are just identifying some pieces that as we look to our facilities, we've identified areas where we have the most challenges and that we'd like you to be thinking about with us, right, as we look towards the future. So if I were to boil it down, these are our top district priorities at this point in time. And again, coming from strategic plan discussions in the buildings with staff members, other parent groups that have gotten together, like through our PAC group, just to talk about district priorities. Fortify, and these are in no order here, so that's why they're not numbered. I love bullet points. Fortify aging infrastructure. And I underline the word here, optimizing, because it really isn't necessarily about building more space everywhere. It's about optimizing the space that we have and doing it in a really smart way. And there are ways to do that so that we can have hands-on STEM and or science instruction in every one of our buildings every day. We want you to talk about the launching a 6-8 middle school model, and I'll have a short piece in here about what the advantages and challenges are of doing something like that. We want to make all spaces, indoor and outdoor, accessible to all students. We want to expand academic and co-curricular opportunities, bringing those that are sometimes outside of the day and hard for kids to access into the day as part of what they do. We want to fortify security systems, including all of our entrances, doors, and particularly the technology that we have in our buildings. And we want to modernize all of our classrooms for flexible, future-ready instruction. I'll get to what that means as a definition in just a second. So for those of you who are only experienced with one or two or even none of our schools, here they are. We have one early childhood center, that's Barnesdale. Right? We have 4 elementary schools, One of them, 1.5, 2 start at kindergarten, the rest start at first grade, and currently they go through 6th grade. And then we have 1 junior high, which you're in today, which has 7th and 8th grade. This is where you all live. These are our boundaries, and the color coding is for the schools. Blue is for Ogden, green is for Forest Road, Cosset is in red or pink, depending on the color of our screen, and yellow is Congress Park. Here's how many students we have. Approximately 3,000 students. And if you're wondering if that's changed over time, the answer is kind of, but not very much. So this is actually a look backwards all the way to 2017, and then all the way forwards through a demographic study that we engaged in through 2034. And we should probably have somewhere, give or take 100 students, around 3,000 for the next 10 or so years. So we're not necessarily in this discussion talking about adding space for more kids everywhere, except that we have a limited number of spaces right now for preschool, right? So if we wanted to have a discussion about expanding preschool options in the district, we'd actually have to talk about expanding that space as well. This is our student demographic. And just a couple other pieces about our student body. About 14% are on free and reduced lunch. 18.5% have an IEP that does not include students with the 504 plan. And then about 6% of our students are English language learners. So let me get a little bit into our buildings here and tell you where we have already been talking about focusing. So our architectural firm, STR, which has been working with the district for a long time now, several decades, we asked in March of 2024 to do a full 20-year facility plan. And what that means is they took a look really closely at each of our buildings to identify just structurally what we probably need to be thinking about doing to each building to keep the building running and maintained and in good working order for the next 20 years, right? So they did site visits. They created facility condition reports. They looked at old documents because they have been working with, so they know what's been done here. And they have access to anticipated life cycles of various components, like how long an HVAC system should work, how long a plumbing system should work, etc. The study they provided us was broken into different pieces. The site itself, our roofs, our exterior walls, HVAC. You can see those pieces all the way down to interior finishes and doors. Right? And one of the things that they did is they coded it by year. So one of the handouts that you have at each of your tables is so you can take more time than just me scrolling through it on the screen, is a color-coded analysis of what they suggested for each of the schools. Red, or the most urgent, likely needs to be accomplished within the next 5 years. That those pieces identified in each school under their red tab are either poor or at their end of their useful life. Or, as you can see at the bottom, required by state code to be corrected. 6 to 10 years, yellow is fair. And we're now actually not even talking about our good or our pieces that are 11 to 20 years. But we will have to think about budgeting for those in the future. So you'll notice things on that page under each school like roof replacement or plumbing or something along those lines. So you can take a look piece by piece at each of those buildings. Right? The other thing that's on your handout is just some general information. How many kids are at the school, what the demographics look like, if there are any special programs associated with the school. For instance, Congress Park is where we have our dual language program, Cosset, and Forest Road and Park and Barnesdale all have a connections program, a series of classrooms inside of them. The Science Center is currently at Barnesdale, so you'll see what the other programs are that are in those buildings. To line it up, we're going to kind of go in alphabetical order, and I'll go building by building, and you can follow along in that packet. But just to give you a sense for each one, Barnesdale was actually built in '58. It was built, one half of it was built to be a school. The other half was built for a number of other things. Girl Scouts have been in there, the Lanks Township Treasury Office has been in there, The Park District has been in the building. You can all probably name 2 or 3 other things, but one side of the building, which is very, at the time, it was not very school-like. It had a lot of small spaces with offices that had to be renovated over time. Right, was built in 1958. It currently has an enrollment of 305 students. That includes preschool and kindergarten. Congress Park was built in 1900, renovated in 49 and 54, and most recently in 2002, it received a bit of a facelift and an addition or two. It is a K-6 building. It has 411 students, and it does house our dual language program. Cosset was built in 22. It was renovated again in 75. It is grades 1 through 6 with 474 students. You can see Forest Road, 1950, and then again in 52. Ogden, 1910, 55. They also got a renovation. Ogden did it in 2002. And then Park here originally was Nazareth High School, which is why we have the most beautiful auditorium that any middle school has anywhere that I've ever seen. It was originally built not to be a middle school, right? But we now have the benefit of having it, which is wonderful. 1949, 69 were pieces added on. And in 1975, it was purchased by the district and renovated to be the building that we have today. And currently, it houses the 2 grades at approximately 658 students. So now you can go one by one, and I'll just sort of talk about the top challenges. So the top challenges at Barnesdale continue to be space for an expanding connections program. Over the last year, we grew by 2 full sections. That means 2 new classrooms, right, that didn't necessarily exist. We took office space and made a classroom out of it, and we took a part of the Science Center and built an art and music class downstairs so that we could free up a class upstairs, in addition to an extra kindergarten class because our kindergarten enrollment went up last year. Aging infrastructure, you can see the pieces that are on there under red and yellow. Playground accessibility, it has the same challenge that the Forest Road School has, with Forest Road Playground has. And then interior safety doors and locks. And what I mean by that, and we'll get to that at some point when we talk about the actual pieces here, maybe in our next workshop. When we talk about doors and locks, we're talking about putting frames around doors, having solid fire-rated doors, handles that are actually levers so that they're ADA accessible, and then automatic closing mechanisms that go with each door. So every time you see a door and you look for those 4 things, that would be a safe, ready door. Right? If you want to get really technical, you also want to have doors that are digitally, electronically locked and unlocked. That's super hefty price tag. We're really not talking about that right now. Right? But we would just like every door in our entire district to be safe and ready and strong. Congress Park, aging infrastructure again, indoor safety doors and locks, space for academic programming. This is the building that did have the most recent, this and Ogden had the most recent renovations, which were 22 years ago. Cosset, aging infrastructure. Notably, and I think anyone who's ever been or taught or worked at Cosset knows that the bathrooms are just not great. So let's be really open about it. This would be one where we would recommend a much more ambitious renovation of bathrooms over the course of time. Space for students. The cafeteria doesn't hold all the students, and if you've ever been to the gym, you know there's a pretty large pole right next to the basketball area, which isn't necessarily prevent play, but it also doesn't make it the most inviting space for kids to be playing in there. It is a load-bearing pole. You cannot just take it out. That's been asked. I think the building would not survive. Space for academic programming, again, if we're talking about hands-on science and we want to find a space, we actually would have to have a space inside the building. And then accessibility. Interior, we have the chair lifts and we have no elevator system to work with students who need to move who are not as mobile. Forest Road, again, space for students. We have the gym, we have the cafeteria that doesn't hold enough kids, and we have music in the cafeteria in the morning. Building security, this one's a little bit unusual. One of the things that we continued to talk about when we did our first Future Ready discussion was that the entrance to the building is actually on the playground, which is not typically where you would build an entrance to a school. So the playground entrance is really not in the most secure location. Doors and locks are the same. Space again for academic programming, accessibility. This is you got to step up onto the wood chip playground, and an aging infrastructure like most of our other buildings. Ogden, same pieces, aging infrastructure. Ogden actually has the oldest playground in the district and playground structure in the district. Interior space, safety, doors and locks again, and then again space for academic program. But it did have renovation. I believe 2 or 3 classrooms were added in 2002 for growth. And then we have Park. Top challenges again, space for academic and elective programming. So when students get here, not only do they have their core classes, but they also have opportunities for electives that actually can merge with and lead to those that they could be taking in Lyons Township. We'll talk about middle school programming and why that sometimes requires a different structure inside the school building, aging and interior safety indoors. So you can see those mirroring the packet that you have in front of you. So as we think about all this, one question you might think is like, is this like harmful to students? And the answer is, our students have a really great school system right now. I'm very proud to work in this district. It is amazing to watch our teachers do all the things that they do with our students on a daily basis. I was at Forest Road today and got to see great things again. I'm trying to paint this in such a way as to say we have challenges and we also have opportunities, but we also have great teachers and great kids and a great school system. So I don't want anyone to hear just the negative here, because this is really about thinking about not only how can we improve what we currently have, but also sort of improve for the next generation as well, right, as part of this sort of community school system. So as we think about this building as a middle school, I just kind of want to touch on a few of the advantages, because this is something that when I walked into my office, which is through 2 of those walls, right there on the other side, there were architectural plans drawn from 2011 or 12 for this building to become a 6A middle school. So I asked the question, well, what happened to that? Right? And I didn't really get a terrific answer other than that at some point in time there had to be a decision made. Do we expand and build onto Barnesdale, or do we redevelop this building because we can only afford one? Right? And the decision was made to go with early childhood. And that makes perfect sense to me. Right? But it has been in the minds of community members for quite a long time now. Right? So just kind of want to talk through what that means and what it looks like, and maybe even our 6th graders are a little bit now more ready for being in a middle school setting than they were even 10 or 12 years ago. So one of the things that we think about when you talk about middle schools is that it provides what I would say is a more developmentally appropriate education. That is, the curriculum for 6th grade, it's like 6th graders shouldn't be on an island. Almost all curriculums you can see is written K-5, 6, 8, 9, 12, right? And so many of our teachers actually do a really great job who are 6th grade teachers. They come over here, they articulate already with our 7th and 8th grade teachers, because that's the grouping, right, that makes the most sense, right? So in a smaller learning community that you can create through 6th, 7th, and 8th, where you actually, if you build a middle school model, right, appropriately, you actually have a 6th grade team, a 7th grade team, and an 8th grade team. And inside of each of those grade levels, you sometimes will team them into smaller teams so that there's more specific attention paid, and you can handle some of the, let's just call them big feelings and emotions that a lot of adolescents have and feel and express during school. Right, so it just makes sense to wrap more services around students at that adolescent level inside of this teaming structure, and that's how you build a good middle school. Right, so not only are there academic reasons, but there are other just sort of advantage reasons, like 3 continuous years of language and music, right, that they may have, but then this is a continuous program, sometimes with the same set of teachers sort of accomplishing the same goals and outcomes, and directly aligned with what they're going to do at LT. There are several IESA opportunities that can go all the way down to 6th grade. If you're not familiar with that, it is the elementary and middle school version of the IHSA, right? And we actually have 2 young ladies who are going to the state cross-country tournament. I just lost their names.
Lucy Fletcher.
Say it again. Lucy Fletcher. Let's call her out. And I don't know. Okay.
First increase.
Okay. Anyway, so it's an example of how more students can be involved in these wonderful opportunities that actually provide for these great competitions. This year we're going to launch our first wrestling program here at this school. 7th and 8th graders will have the opportunity to participate in that. It's become a huge program at LT over the last decade, so they have access to those pieces, which is great. There's more SEL support. We have these advisory programs. Like I said, there are more wraparound services. A lot of our 6th graders in a quiet moment will tell us that they don't quite love the elementary school expectations. Walking in straight lines between classes, having to be quiet at all points during passing periods. They would like a little bit more freedom, and that's what students in 6th grade middle schools often get. There are just other alignment and readiness pieces too. Aligned grading practices, which is part of our strategic plan, which we will have accomplished by the end of this year to start next year with LT. Aligned homework practices. Schedule clarity, we're working on that as well to figure out how this building can mimic some of the other buildings that they'll eventually go to. We currently do scaffolded alignment pieces with curriculum and content with the LT teachers. And like I said before, our 6th grade teachers do a wonderful job of already working with 7 and 8. Right? And then we can align exploratory and elective options and create more student choice. As far as comparables, if you're asking who else does this, the answer is basically everyone. Right? All of the LT feeders except for District 105 have a 6-8 model right now, and almost every other district in the state of Illinois and really across the country has moved to this model over the last 10 to 15 years. Downers Grove is one of the closest ones that's making the shift right now. Theirs will start, I believe, next year. It's so ingrained, though, also in our area and in the state in licensure, that actually licensure for teachers changed to become K-5, 6-8 with what's called middle grade endorsements in 2018. Now, it's just not all roses, and I don't remember the rest of that cliche, but there is a cost, and part of the cost is sort of just the change process itself. It would probably take somewhere in the neighborhood of 2 to 3 years to accomplish a shift to a 6-8 middle school. We would have to work with our staff, make sure that we have all the appropriate certifications, right? And then there's always the emotional readiness of our 6th graders. We have to take that into consideration, and if I'm being really honest, the emotional readiness of some of our parents to let their 6th graders be in a middle school, right? That's what I've also heard. It can be a scary place. But the high school is also a scary place that first year too, and actually 1st grade is kind of a scary place too, that first year out of kindergarten. So we go through transitions, and that is part of the challenge that we have to work on and work with. Just thinking about districts, what other districts offer as far as these opportunities are concerned for middle school. We're up the top there. Before and after school, we do band and orchestra. You can see that often other schools that have a middle school model and a sort of a straight 8 schedule offer those types of electives during the school day. So it's not just a before school. You don't have to get them there super early in the morning. As far as exploratory or elective options, just to give you a hint of the difference, exploratory is when you have 3 or 4 things in one class. You kind of shift between them to explore different topics. A lot of schools will do a 6th grade exploratory elective, and then the next 2 years they get to pick semesters that they can kind of focus on the electives that they really like. We have 5 rotating elective options right now. There are a number of districts that are neighbors to us and that feed into LT that have far more options. And then if you look to the right, there is this growing trend of these STEM and maker spaces inside of elementary school. So that last column is not about middle school. It's more about our elementary schools and how we compare to these other districts. So anytime you see a yes, it means they have built-in elementary school STEM labs that students access on a regular basis each week. In fact, Elmhurst just built a brand new elementary school, and that was one of the sort of the features of building that school. So these are just some of the comparisons. So earlier I talked about future-ready classrooms. So it's not just about fixing and tuck pointing and roofs, but it's also about making the classrooms as fit for learning as possible. This is a 1950s classroom. This is a 2000 classroom. Some things have changed, some things have not, right? Today's classrooms are typically, right, a lot more vibrant, right, than classrooms have been in the past. The upper right-hand corner is actually just down the hall. It's our new setup for our STEM elective that's here for 8th graders. But you'll see that a number of places, if you're making maker spaces or if you're making STEM classrooms, are going to be places where students can do these things. But I said at the beginning, they're accessible, they're safe, they're built to last, they're comfortable, they're flexible, they're community and collaboration oriented, right? But they're also doing this, and it's just not to get too philosophical, but we want the bottom level of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. We want everyone to feel psychologically secure. We want them to feel safety, right? As the phrase goes, you have to Maslow before you can bloom. And if you know Bloom's taxonomy on the right, we would design classrooms today keeping in mind that they have to be safe and secure, but what we want them to do in every classroom is to have access to materials and experiences and facilities that help them achieve the top 3 pieces on that Bloom's taxonomy. That they have space to analyze, to evaluate, to converse, and to create. Not to beat a dead horse here, but these are the 2027 top 10 job skills. They go hand in hand with the top of Bloom's taxonomy as well. We want to create spaces where kids are able to experience some of the skills associated with these top jobs. As a person who worked in high schools my entire career, this is the type of thing we'd always look at when we thought about curriculum and programming, right? As I think about future-ready facilities and spaces, I think more and more about how we can even start younger, putting kids in situations where they can be creative right inside their own classroom. They don't have to leave to go do it to a special or to something else. So, just to boil it down, we want classrooms, if we were to renovate every classroom in the district, that promotes choice, comfort, versatility, connection, and stimulation, right? So that we can achieve the academic goals for every kid. Here are just some pictures of what renovated spaces look like. These are elementary schools. These are actually from the architect that we use. What you'll see is a lot of technology. You'll see a lot of open area. You'll see a lot of collaboration. You'll see a lot of flexible furniture. When we do building tours, which we have planned for later in November, as Val said, if you're doing a park tour, you'll see that we did 4 classrooms, 3 of which are traditional classrooms. Here, where we touched 5 things, we would do 6 if we could do it all, right? Floor, ceiling, changing out old lights into LED lights, thinking about cost and energy efficiency, paint for walls, which haven't been done in quite a while, right? And flexible furniture, right? So those are the 5 big things that have been done in 4 of the classrooms here, so we can start thinking about and asking students about their feedback on what those classrooms feel like and do for them as learners, as well as teachers to give that same type of feedback. Here's some other elementary spaces. Here's some middle school spaces. What you'll see is they're a little bit larger, but also like in the bottom left corner, you can see that most middle and high schools are now building in common areas. Not only where kids can go work independently or work in pairs or groups, but also when you have a bit of downtime. A lot of schedules now build in time during the day that is flex time for students to go to a resource to get the math help they need, or the English help they need, or the science help they need. Those are spaces where that type of thing happens. Okay. I'm wrapping up, I promise. We get to talk to your tables. School finances. We didn't want to leave this presentation without talking about what might be the elephant in the room. Like, how do you pay for all of these things? So, as a bit of a primer, schools have 3 different types of funding sources and ways to spend. So our operating funds, right, that is the general funds that come in every year, and I'll show you how they come in, right? We use those general operating funds to pay for things like salaries and general utilities. We have reserve funds. In fact, we have a board policy that mimics the state policy that says that we must keep 25% of our total expenditures in reserve at all points in time. We currently keep 27%, right? So we're right on the edge of that. Reserve funds sometimes are used for facility updates, one-time economic changes. We actually had to get a loan last year when the state didn't come through with its payment to us, right, on time. So we actually had to get a loan from another organization, right, in order to actually meet payroll, because the money was going to come in after, and we couldn't even have enough in our reserve fund for that. And then the other way that we fund things is through bonds, right? So capital expenses are often done through bonds. New buildings, major facility upgrades are done. And one is your checking account, the other is your savings account, and this one is, for better or worse, credit, right? We're going out and we're taking out a loan to fund some of the larger pieces. This is how our revenue looks. This is our 2025 operating revenue, about $52 million. We receive 87% of that through local taxes. We get about 9% from the state, and then we get about 4% from the federal government. Those are mostly grants. That QR code, I'll leave it up here for a second, actually takes you to our district website where there are a lot more information. And actually, if you go to Illinois School Report Card and put in District 102 and go to the accountability section, you can also find a great deal of information about teacher salaries and how we rate against other school districts and all that kind of stuff. It's all public information and all worthy of questions if you want to put them down in there if you want to know more about that. Here's how our expenses look. And this is a pretty similar pie graph that you would see to almost any other school district. The vast majority, as it should be, of our expenses go to the people who are working with your students on a daily basis. So about 71% go to salaries and benefits for teachers, paraprofessionals, nurse aides, community liaisons, and just the wide variety of people that are working with students. Other pieces, contractual services, copy machines, curriculum organizations, that's become a huge piece of contractual services. Every time we buy a new curriculum now, it's part of, we sign a contract with, like EdGems is our new math curriculum. It's not just you buy a book anymore, it's you buy, all the pieces that go with it, the database pieces, it's how they become available. So those are our expenses. You can see that they're slightly under our revenue, which is good, which allows us to put a little bit of money into the reserve, but there's not a great deal there. This is a 10-year building expense and capital project history. Your eyes might naturally go towards the yellow bars, right? But I want you just to look at the blue bars for a second, because they also represent, on a yearly basis, and those, by the way, are millions on the left side, how much we're spending in the district on building expenses. And these are just repairs to buildings, right? So it's not like we're letting things fall apart. We're spending a great deal of money on a yearly basis, right, working towards repairs and trying to make the buildings as great and ready for learning as possible. The yellow bar, though, the one in 2024-25, that's the roof here at Park and an HVAC system on top of that roof that does half of the building, as well as a piece of the Barnsdale chiller that went in for air conditioning to also continue at Barnsdale, right? But then you go back about 10 years, and that's the last time we actually did a large capital project in 2014, 15, 16, right? So it's been quite a while since we've invested outside of the traditional building expenses for large capital projects. This is what our reserve fund has looked like throughout history. You'll see that back in 2016, that significant dip. That was about the same time, if those of you were living here, that there was what was called an operational fund referendum. And that operational fund referendum was solely used in order to put enough money back into the district reserve fund in order to bring it back up into a 25% adequacy. So you can see that it sort of dipped down there was a need, and now it's back, and we've maintained a balanced budget with some savings since approximately 2020. Now, when we talk about district capital needs and projects, if you are regular consumers of Board of Education meetings, and I encourage you all to be, right, you'll know that over the last month or two, we engaged in what's called restructuring some of our existing bonds. These are called non-referendum bonds. It's just sort of extending some of the other investments that we already have made, right? And what that allowed us to do by extending them is actually pull $8 million so that we could begin on some of the most urgent capital construction needs right now. So if I flip back to those pictures earlier and you saw the one of a wall that's cracked, that's a tuck pointing issue that we need to fix right now, right? So it's not going to be something that we're going to wait for. Roofing is part of that. Plumbing is part of that. Tuck pointing, like I said. And we also have a couple different projects right now using that $8 million to think about how we can renovate some of our classrooms and improve general technology so it's safer and more secure in each of our buildings. 3.4 million of that 8 million is scheduled to be spent actually in this school year. We're already in the process of doing that. Now, not to bury the lead, but that red zone on all of your handouts, if you added up what all of that costs for the next 5 years in the red urgent area, it's approximately $35 million worth of next 5-year needs, right? So that type of number is very hard to work with inside of our current budget. In fact, I won't even paint it that way. It's impossible to work with inside of our current budget. We're addressing the most urgent needs there with that $8 million. So you can see that one of the reasons that we're talking about future-ready facilities is not just because we'd like to make our classrooms look better, right? It's also because we've identified a number of areas that we just need to work on over the course of the next 5 to 10 years to keep everything running really, really well. So here's just some information about referendum, since that's the big bad word that I'm sure is bouncing around in some people's heads. But a bond referendum is similar to a home mortgage. It's payable from a dedicated property levy tax. Bond referendums cannot be used for supplies, salaries, transportation. There was a bond referendum for our buildings in 2001, right? And that went to pay for a district HVAC system. That's when Congress Park in Ogden got room additions, and it eventually went to fund the Ogden Gym addition that went in there. So that's the last time there was a bond referendum from District 102. In 2017, as I referenced before, there was an operational referendum, and that just went to the reserve fund. That did not go to finance any of the facilities or the salaries. There are a couple upcoming election opportunities to put a bond referendum on the ballot. The first is April 2025, so that's this coming April. After that, the next one is March of the following year, and then the one after that is November 2026. Right, so those are when we could put a bond referendum on the ballot. And we wanted to show you this just so that everyone has an understanding of what the possibility might be. And I understand that this might be the type of slide that you sort of like focus on, and that's okay, because we want to be really honest. What you see down the left side is if we were to ask the taxpayers to consider a referendum, a bond referendum, in terms of the dollar amounts on the left side. So as I said in a couple slides ago, we put the bare bones, make sure all of our facilities are completely updated at $35 million. Across the top, you see 400,000, 500,000, 600,000. Those represent the average or the median home values from left to right: Brookfield, LaGrange Park, and LaGrange. Right, and that's according to Zillow. Could be right, could be wrong. Right, but $400,000, $500,000, $600,000, and then what you see there is the yearly amount that your taxes would go up, broken down by year and by month. And if you're saying to yourself, well, I have a home that's worth $800,000 in Brookfield, you would just find your lane, and then you can double the number, right? So this is a $400,000 home. So we wanted to show you this just to make sure that we're not pulling any punches, that while we're talking about our facilities, we're also talking about ways that we can financially address some of those needs. This is not a request, right? This is really an open discussion, because in the end, we don't control it. You do, right? So we want you to have as much information about the district and about our about the potential financial pieces that go into these types of decisions as possible.
Let's give a round of applause. We also understand that's a lot of information in a small amount of time, but again, we want to keep ourselves moving. So now we're going to do some group work together. And on your table, you have a Chromebook, and you also each, so that you can write your own notes like most of us like to, you have a paper, everyone has one, you're welcome to write on that. And we're going to go through the instructions that we're going to ask you to do. Small group exercise. So first, at each table, we're going to ask you to select a recorder and a facilitator. I don't know, whatever you like to do. Rock, paper, scissors, I don't know. So the recorder is responsible to complete the information on the Chromebook so that we have access to that and we'll be able to use it. And it's really important that you complete all of the information there. And the facilitator is going to be facilitating the discussion. You're going to try to keep your group focused, which I know is hard when we have this much information. And then you're going to report the results. We're going to come around and ask you just to report some aspects. Don't worry, we're not going to ask for every single thing that was said. I'm supposed to be turning. Okay. Let's see. Please make sure that the information recorded on the Chromebook and on that worksheet is a collective voice, not just like one or two people who just fill it in and it's done, but try to get everybody's input. And especially if someone isn't talking, solicit that. Let's make sure we're all getting our voices heard. We are going to try to keep it to about 20 or 30 minutes with your group, and then we're going to report out. So at the end of the session, we'll ask for the Chromebooks back. And if you have any trouble getting onto the Chromebook, it should pop to the right page, but just, wake it up and then raise your hand and let us know if there's a problem. We'll be happy to come and help you. So you have 2 tasks today that you're going to be working on with your partners. First one is you're going to come to a consensus of the top 3 to 5 questions, which you probably have like 25, but top 3 to 5 on the areas that your group needs more information on that was discussed. And before fulfilling the charge to the Board of Education. So what other questions, what other information do we need before we could really make decisions as a group? And then the task 2 that we're asking is, as we're planning for a future ready District 102, review over the following priorities and decide as a group whether how important they are. You're going to go through that and you're going to make a decision on that. It's on the back of the sheet in case you're looking for that, which I'll find you. And just discuss it with your group and make those priorities known. Okay? And that's the same thing you're going to be typing into your phone. Okay? If you have any questions, we'll do filtering through. We're happy to help you. Again, a facilitator and a recorder. Okay, see you in about 20 minutes.